Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Friday, October 31st, 2025. A federal judge orders the Trump administration to use emergency funds to pay for SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also called food stamps, during the federal government shutdown, which is now on day 31. Senate Republicans do not appear eager to heed President Donald Trump's call to get rid of the Senate filibuster to overcome Democratic opposition to the Republican bill that would reopen the government. President Donald Trump says media reports that he is considering military strikes on Venezuelan territory are not true. But questions continue from members of Congress of both parties about the legal justification for the deadly military attacks on suspected illegal drug-carrying boats off the Venezuelan coast. Just a few days until Election Day 2025, we'll take a closer look at the races for governor in Virginia and New Jersey. And daylight saving time comes to an end this weekend. There was another unsuccessful try this week in the Senate to pass a bill that would stop the twice-yearly clock switching and make daylight saving time permanent. ABC News writes a federal judge in Rhode Island has temporarily ordered the Trump administration to continue funding benefits for SNAP, the federally funded Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. U.S. District Judge John J. McConnell, Jr. said the court is orally at this time ordering that USDA must distribute the contingency money timely or as soon as possible for the November 1st payments to be made. After an hour-long emergency hearing, Judge McConnell ruled that the suspension of SNAP funding is arbitrary and likely to cause irreparable harm, citing the terror felt by Americans who are scrambling to meet their basic nutritional needs. The ruling came as a federal judge in Boston, in a separate case, ruled that the Trump administration's attempt to suspend SNAP funding is unlawful, but declined to immediately order the program to be funded. That was from the ABC News article. Senator Patty Murray, Democrat of Washington State, Appropriations Committee ranking member, writing on X, breaking, a federal judge affirms what we've said all along. Trump absolutely can keep SNAP running. That's what the contingency fund is for. If families go hungry, it's because Trump chose to ignore the law to cut off SNAP for political leverage. This morning, before the rulings from the judges, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins was asked at a news conference on Capitol Hill about funding SNAP come November 1st.
The minority leader in the House said yesterday, Hakeem Jeffries, that the term he used was lying, that some of these SNAP benefits couldn't be liberated. Can you explain, refute that, give us your perspective, what their perspective is, and what your argument is, why they get it?
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity to explain that. So the fact that the Democrats are saying, but wait, USDA has money in their accounts, why it is really their fault, I've seen it over and over and over from some of their leaders, is absolute false, and it is a lie. We have been saying on October 10th, we sent messages out. On October 24th, we sent messages out. These benefits end on November 1st. Now, let me get down into a little bit of the details on that to better explain. So there is a contingency fund at USDA, but that contingency fund, by the way, doesn't even cover, I think, half of the $9.2 billion that would be required for November SNAP, but it is only allowed to flow if the underlying program is funded. It's called a contingency fund, and by law, contingency fund can only flow when the underlying fund is flowing. So, for example, if today the Democrats say, oh, never mind, sorry, we'll open the government, and SNAP flows, Hurricane Melissa or one of the hurricanes hits, that's the contingency fund that we would use to send more money into the vulnerable communities that are harmed by a specific event like a hurricane. But it is a contingency fund that can only flow if the underlying appropriation is approved. And listen, even if it could flow, it doesn't even cover half of the month of November. So here we are again in 2 weeks having the exact same conversation.
Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins at a news conference with House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, today on Capitol Hill. She blamed the Senate Democrats for the government shutdown and the cutoff of SNAP money, calling it a dereliction of duty. SNAP costs about $8 billion per month nationwide. 42 million Americans, 1 in 8, get benefits. The lawsuit was brought by 25 states, plus the District of Columbia, over the $5 billion contingency fund. President Donald Trump, flying from Washington, D.C. to Florida today, was asked about SNAP and the government shutdown.
On the SNAP benefits set to expire tomorrow, folks are talking about putting out about canned goods and non-perishables for trick-or-treaters. Is there a possibility, like you did with the military, moving around funds? Is there a possibility to do that?
Well, there always is, but all the Democrats have to do is say, let's go. I mean, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to agree. All they have to do is say, the government is open. And we only need 5 Democrats. But they've become a radical left party. They really have become a very radical left party. And they've lost their minds. They've lost their minds. All they have to do is say, the government is open, and that's the end of it. And, largely, when you talk about SNAP, you're talking about largely Democrats. But I'm president. I want to help everybody. I want to help Democrats and Republicans. But when you're talking about SNAP, if you look, it's largely Democrats. They're hurting their own people.
President Donald Trump on Air Force One speaking to reporters. Since his comments, one federal judge has ruled that the emergency money for SNAP must be used during the government shutdown starting Saturday. And a second federal judge ruled the Trump administration's attempt to suspend SNAP funding is unlawful. But she did not immediately order the program be funded. From Politico, Republicans are quickly tamping down President Trump's call to eliminate the Senate filibuster as they try to keep pressure on Democrats to end the 31-day government shutdown. GOP leaders believed Thursday they were on track to reopen agencies as soon as next week. Then Trump threw a fresh complication into their laps overnight when he revived calls for Republicans to invoke the nuclear option and eliminate the 60-vote threshold for passing most legislation. Without it, Republican senators could reopen the government on their own. But many GOP senators have vocally defended the filibuster, including Majority Leader John Thune, calling the 60-vote rule a fundamental feature of the Senate and one that works to conservatives' benefit in the long run. A spokesperson for the South Dakota Republicans said in a statement on Friday that Leader Thune's position on the importance of the legislative filibuster is unchanged. That was from Politico. House Speaker Mike Johnson, during his now daily government shutdown news conference in the U.S. Capitol, was asked about President Trump's post.
I'm sure you saw President Trump's tweet last night suggesting that it's time for Senate Republicans to blow up the filibuster in order to get the continuing resolution passed. I know in the past you've been reluctant to encourage your Senate colleagues to do that or not. Are you aligned with the president now that it's time for him to take this dramatic step to
I haven't. The president's been very busy. He was in Asia doing all these trade agreements. I've been a little busy, as you know. We haven't spoken since he returned. I sent him a text earlier this morning. I saw that as well. What you're seeing is an expression of the president's anger at the situation. He is as angry as I am and the American people are about this madness. And he just desperately wants the government to be reopened so that all these resources can flow to the people who need it so much. Look, I'll just say this in general. As I've said many times about the filibuster, it's not my call. I don't have a say in this. It's a Senate chamber issue. We don't have that in the House, as you know. But the filibuster has traditionally been viewed as a very important safeguard. If the shoe was on the other foot, I don't think our team would like it. The Democrats, look, they've said what they would do. They would pack the Supreme Court. They would make Puerto Rico and D.C. states. They would ban firearms. They would do all sorts of things that would be very harmful for the country. And the safeguard in the Senate has always been the filibuster. But again, not my issue, not something I get to even weigh in on. My opinion on this is not relevant. It's the senators. But I think that it just is another expression of the frustration, of the pressure that is being felt, the anger by the president and by me and all of us that we're in this situation at all. Do your basic job. I'm going to say this again. We have put zero Republican policy priorities on the CR. It is Biden-level policies and spending. They have no excuse at all not to support it. They have no excuse to put all this pain on the American people, except that for what we've just articulated and repeated here every day, they want to give a showing to the radical left fringes of their base, and they want to give illegal benefits or benefits back to illegal aliens and non-citizens and all the other crazy stuff that they've claimed.
House Speaker Mike Johnson at a news conference. President Trump posted Thursday night, in part, Majority Leader John Thune and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson are doing a great job, but the Democrats are crazed lunatics that have lost all sense of wisdom and reality. It is now time for the Republicans to play their Trump card and go for what is called the nuclear option, get rid of the filibuster, and get rid of it now. 1 week ago on C-SPAN's program Ceasefire, 2 senators, James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma, and Chris Coons, Democrat of Delaware, talked about the filibuster and the government shutdown.
The Senate is the place where the grown-ups are supposed to live, and we have to have hard conversations. The reason the cloture rule and the filibuster rule even exists is it forces people that disagree, just like Americans do, to be able to have a place in government where two sides that disagree have to sit down and be able to work it out. So I've been so adamant to be able to protect the filibuster and the cloture rules, to say we can't give that up, because this is the spot in the United States Senate where Americans that disagree get the opportunity to be able to sit down and work it out.
Speaking of the filibuster, I do want to play you some sound from Senator John Fetterman, who expressed support for nuking the filibuster this week. Take a listen.
Some of your Republican colleagues have proposed nuking the filibuster to force the government to reopen. What do you think?
Yeah, of course. Carve it out for that, absolutely. We ran on that. We ran on killing the filibuster, and now we love it. You know, it's like carve it out so we can move on.
Senator Coons, what do you think of what your Democratic colleague just said there?
I agree with what my Republican colleague said, which was the thing that distinguishes the Senate is that we are still forced to negotiate and to work together. I respect Senator Fetterman, but I think that was more of an off-the-cuff answer than a measured and thoughtful response about the structural significance of the filibuster.
Senator Chris Coons, Democrat of Delaware, joining Senator James Langford, Republican of Oklahoma, on C-SPAN's ceasefire program 1 week ago. More from the Politico article. To change the Senate's rules, Republicans would need 50 votes plus a tie break from Vice President J.D. Vance, meaning they could lose no more than 3 senators. Republicans do not currently have the votes within the conference to nix the filibuster. 4 people granted anonymity to discuss internal deliberations told Politico Friday. And the article has posts or statements from spokespeople against the filibuster from Republican Senators John Barrasso of Wyoming, John Curtis of Utah, and Tom Tillis of North Carolina. From healthcare finance news, when open enrollment begins on November 1st for Affordable Care Act health insurance, consumers may face sticker shock, and not just those who formerly qualified for premium tax credits. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services released ACA prices on Thursday. Prices showed a 30% increase in states using the federal marketplace and a 17% hike in states running their own marketplaces, according to KFF. This averages out to a 26% increase for 2026, KFF said. It's those expiring ACA health insurance tax credits that Senate and House Democrats have been focusing on in the government shutdown. They say an extension must be part of any bill that reopens the government. Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia, posted a video about this today. He also included a Halloween theme, since today is Halloween.
Well, it's going to be a great night for Halloween. I hope everybody has a happy one. We'll have a couple thousand folks at my house in Old Town. And while that'll be happy, tomorrow people get the spookiness when they look at those exploding healthcare costs as they try to shop for affordable healthcare. That coming on top of the kind of rising prices, 40% increase in price of turkeys, 25% increase in price of chocolate is going to mean it's going to be a more expensive Halloween tonight, and it's going to be a downright frightening healthcare experience tomorrow. We'll get through.
Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia, in a video. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, Democrat from Washington State, also posting a video about the shutdown, the health insurance tax credits, and food aid.
Hey everyone, I am here at City Hall because I've organized a resource fair for federal workers that have been laid off, furloughed, fired, and we're doing it with the City of Seattle. We're really grateful. We're going to have a whole set of community resources here for people to tap into. We've got Food Lifeline that is here providing food for people. We know these times are really tough, and the refusal of Republicans to fund SNAP on top of everything, that's basic food assistance. We know people are struggling, that federal workers have missed paychecks, that there were 250,000 federal workers fired before the shutdown even happened, and now so many more that are struggling just to make that paycheck. And so while we stand up and fight and hold the line to make sure that Republicans provide health care for people, that premiums don't double and triple, we also want to make sure we're taking care of basic needs and showing the generosity of a community that is ready to step in and help people. And so this is one of the many things that we're doing. I was at food banks earlier this week, helping to hand out hot meals, helping to package groceries for people from the food bank markets. Next week, we're going to be doing a volunteer event, again, to make sure that we are right here and that everyone, federal workers across this state, across the country, understand the Democrats are fighting for you at the big level and at the small level. We're a community. We believe in you. We appreciate you. Republicans need to negotiate with us, to cancel the cuts, to save health care, to extend the premiums, to extend the tax credits so that people's health care doesn't skyrocket. And we need to make sure we're reopening SNAP, that it doesn't shut down. And in 61 years of the SNAP program, that's food stamps, basic food assistance for the hungry that serves 42 million people, it has never been shut down. This would be the first time, and the cruelty is beyond belief. So we're here, ready for the resource fair and ready to continue to fight to hold the line for Americans to get what they deserve. Lower costs on everything.
Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, Democrat from Washington State, in a video. The House and Senate did not meet for legislative business today. The federal government shutdown will therefore go until Monday at least. That would be day 34. The Senate is back next week. The House announced today that next week will be another district work period for members. That means no votes will be held for a 7th consecutive week in the House. Wall Street today, the Dow up 40, S&P up 17, NASDAQ up 143. From Newsweek, President Donald Trump said no Friday when asked if he was considering military strikes in Venezuela, amid reports that the use of force inside the country was imminent. He did not elaborate. The president spoke to reporters on Air Force One while en route to Florida for the weekend. His administration has recently conducted a series of strikes on boats in the Pacific Ocean that officials said were carrying drugs. The strikes have killed 61 people, and the United States has deployed an unusually large number of warships to the region. That was from Newsweek. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN summit in Malaysia, was asked by a reporter about the legal justification for the boat strikes.
On the strikes, Ecuador decided not to prosecute one of the survivors of the previous strikes. Did the U.S. have enough evidence to identify that individual as a drug trafficker? And if so, why did the U.S. not try him in court?
So we definitely have the evidence. One thing that's been highly misconstrued here is that in some way we don't know precisely who we're striking and why, what those affiliations are, what they're carrying, where they're going. As I've said before, just like Al-Qaeda in the Middle East, we understood that. We know how to map networks and hunt enemies of our country, terrorists, and in this case, that's what's happening. I mentioned this in another meeting too. There were moments in Iraq and Afghanistan when we were fighting terrorists where we would have to hand those terrorists over to a host nation and believe that they would prosecute them and want them to prosecute them. Sometimes, sadly, tragically, they wouldn't be held. We jokingly called it the Iraqi catch and release program, where there was no prosecution when there should have been. And frankly, it made our jobs more difficult and dangerous on the battlefield. Now you're having to relitigate that. In some cases, we understand by handing people over to host countries, they may treat that situation differently, even if we present that evidence. It's a risk you have to take, but it doesn't change how we're focusing on these narco-terrorists. They are the Al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere, and we will strike them wherever we find them.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth answering reporters' questions in Malaysia at the ASEAN meeting. Congressman Adam Smith, Democrat from Washington State, ranking member on the Armed Services Committee, spoke today at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York City about a classified briefing that committee members got Thursday about the strikes on the alleged drug boats.
The President of the United States has decided that he will institute the death penalty for drug dealing. Now, that's an interesting policy question. All right, it's been debated. Different countries have gone in different places on it, but it's not a policy question that we've had in the United States of America. That's not legal. That's not something that we've decided to do. So not only has the President of the United States decided to circumvent all of that and say, yeah, we're going to have the death penalty, but he's decided to do it without any due process to appoint himself judge, jury, and executioner. And who are they targeting? From what we can glean both from the brief yesterday and from what they've said publicly, there are 24 different narco-terrorist groups, as they call them. We have no details on who's the 24, who's in the 24. But it's also not just people who are part of those 24 drug cartels, but anyone who is affiliated with those drug cartels, which also comes without much of a definition. So the president has basically empowered himself to use the United States military to do lethal strikes against tens of thousands of ill-defined people without any oversight. That is a clear abuse of power and a massive expansion of the power for the President of the United States, and I believe it undermines the Constitution and the rule of law to the extent that we care about those things anymore. You talk about the policy, but the Constitution and the rule of law, I'm still of the opinion, matter in maintaining a peaceful civil society, and those are being shredded by the way he is implementing this policy.
I assume you can't get into any detail about it, but was the legal question addressed in the briefing you got yesterday, or was it merely a policy conversation?
No. Sorry, there's one particularly amusing thing that happened on this front that I'm trying to figure out whether or not I can tell you. But they pulled the two lawyers right before the brief. We were supposed to have the chief counsel to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the chief counsel to the Department of Defense. They were pulled. I challenged the alleged liaison on that by saying, you pulled these folks at the last minute. And he explained, no, we didn't pull them. We took them off. At which point I pointed out, I hate to tell you this, but pulled, took off, literally synonymous. So we didn't make a lot of progress in getting an explanation for why that happened. But I think it's because they didn't want to have to try and defend the legality of this. It's the same reason they fired all those inspector generals and all of those JAGs. The president wants to do what he wants to do, and he does not think that the law should literally ever be an impediment to what he wants to do.
Congressman Adam Smith, Democrat of Washington State, Armed Services Committee ranking member at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York City. Congressman Mike Turner, Republican of Ohio, a senior member of the Armed Services Committee, was interviewed on MSNBC this morning about the strikes.
From our classified briefing that we had yesterday, everyone is very, very concerned, of course, about the drug trade and the impact in the United States, the deaths that have occurred, and impacting the flow of drugs into the United States. People are similarly very concerned about what the administration is doing with the deaths that are occurring, with the blowing up of the boats. Yesterday, there were not very good answers as to, what is the standard, what is occurring with the designation of cartels as terrorist organizations. We understand that the structure of these cartels, and designating them as terrorist organizations makes sense. But what is the standard? What is occurring in this? How is it being determined as to how military force is being utilized and being applied in this situation?
Mr. Chairman, did you get the answers that you were looking for yesterday, Mr. Chairman?
No, and in fact, lawyers were supposed to be in the room. They were not. People were very frustrated in the information that was being provided. It was a bipartisan briefing, but people were not happy with the level of information that was provided, and certainly the level of legal justification that was provided.
Congressman Mike Turner, Republican from Ohio, on MSNBC this morning. Washington Post, writing in a letter meant for the eyes of Russia's leader, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, made multiple requests this month. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration was targeting ships off the South American coast and rattling sabers in Washington. Venezuela needed President Vladimir Putin's help. The asks included overhauls of defense radars, military aircraft repairs, and potentially missiles, according to internal U.S. government documents obtained by the Washington Post. Venezuelan government, according to the documents, is also reaching out to China and Iran, soliciting military assistance and equipment to strengthen the country's defenses. Another Newsweek article, President Donald Trump on Friday refused to clarify whether the United States plans to resume underground nuclear weapons testing, which has not been conducted since 1992. Asked if his social media post this week signaling a return to testing, Trump said, "You'll find out very soon," without elaborating. He also said, "We're going to do some testing. Other countries do it. If they're going to do it, we're going to." He declined to provide further details. That was from Newsweek. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was asked about this today.
On nuclear testing, what type of testing is the Defense Department tasked with, and how soon?
Well, we would work with the Department of Energy, but the president was clear. We need to have a credible nuclear deterrent. That is the baseline of our deterrence. And so having understanding and resuming testing is a pretty responsible, very responsible way to do that. I think it makes nuclear conflict less likely if you know what you have and make sure it operates properly. So it's the right directive. We're moving out quickly, and America will ensure that we have the strongest, most capable nuclear arsenal so that we maintain peace through strength. That's what this is. In every meeting, that's what we talk about, peace through strength. We don't seek conflict with China or any other nation. But the stronger we are, the stronger our alliances are, the more we work with allies in this region and around the world, I think the less likely conflict becomes.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth with reporters in Malaysia at the ASEAN meeting. From a Reuters article on this issue, no nuclear power other than North Korea, most recently in 2017, has carried out explosive nuclear testing in over 25 years. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea, it's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. A few more headlines from Associated Press. The White House says tours will restart December 2nd, following their suspension for months due to the construction of President Trump's $300 million ballroom. The East Wing was once part of tour routes, but has been demolished as part of the project. The White House says it'll now offer an updated route, offering guests the opportunity to experience the history and beauty of the People's House. And President Trump posting today on Truth Social with plenty of photos. I renovated the Lincoln bathroom in the White House. It was renovated in the 1940s in an Art Deco green tile style, which was totally inappropriate for the Lincoln era. I did it in black and white polished statuary marble. This was very appropriate for the time of Abraham Lincoln and in fact could be the marble that was originally there. And Virginia State Capitol reporter Tyler Englander of WRIC-TV in Richmond posting online, breaking along party lines, the Virginia Senate has passed a proposed constitutional amendment that could allow Democrats to redraw Virginia's congressional districts in time for the 2026 midterm elections. The amendment has already passed the House. Election Day 2025 is just 4 days away, November 4th, and Virginia is one of the two states holding gubernatorial elections in this odd year. The other is New Jersey. Candidates in both contests have been holding many rallies in the final days. In Virginia, Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears is facing Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. Earl Sears spoke Thursday in Harrisonburg, Virginia.
My opponent, Abigail Spanberger, has already said that she's going to tax you more. Believe her. That's what her party does. Always the Democrats will tax you more. We don't have to look any further than Maryland, where Marylanders were left with a $3 billion budget surplus by a Republican governor. But of course, that's what we do. We had a $10 billion surplus so far since we've been in office. But guess what? In Maryland, folks, with a Democrat governor, they are now, he's only been in office 2 years, they are now $3 billion in the hole. In the hole. And guess what he did to plug that hole? Did he cut government programs that are not working because you already have 10 of them, and my God, 10 of them we don't need because this 5 are doing just fine and those are just wasting the taxpayers' money? Did he do that? No. He kept all those programs and added some more, and then he taxed the people, taxed the Marylanders. And here's the problem. Some of those people he couldn't have taxed them until the Democrats in the legislature agreed to it. And Democrats control the whole shebang there. So they taxed them, and then those business owners who are Democrats started moving their businesses to Virginia. And the question was, well, why are you doing it? Wait for it. They said, because the taxes are too high. But you just voted for those taxes. But we're not complaining. You know what we're going to do? I think we should put up a billboard between us and Maryland, facing Maryland, that says, bring your business to Virginia where the taxes are low. That's what we should do.
Winsome Earl Sears in Harrisonburg, Virginia on Thursday, the Republican nominee for governor. Also Thursday, her opponent in the election, Democrat Abigail Spanberger, was in Alexandria, Virginia.
We are going to win on Tuesday because it is what we must do to ensure that communities across Virginia understand that we will be relentless in working to lower the costs in housing and energy and in healthcare, that amid all of the chaos coming out of Washington and all of the unsteadiness that is hurting so many of our communities, that we are going to elect a governor who will stand up for Virginia. And standing up for Virginia means recognizing that when our federal workforce is attacked from DOGE 1.0 and now an effort to implement a DOGE 2.0 under this government shutdown, that the pain is felt by Virginia families and small business owners who are watching, who have watched their clients and their neighbors be the targets of these efforts, firing people who have devoted themselves to service to country. It impacts them and their livelihoods, yes, but it impacts all of Virginia and our economy. And we need a governor who recognizes that, who will stand up to it, and will make clear that every attack on Virginians is an attack on our Commonwealth's long-term prosperity. And we need a governor who will stand up for small business owners and for farmers and for Virginians when this chaotic trade policy is wreaking havoc on our economy. Virginia's farmers have lost entire markets because of retaliatory tariffs. Virginia's farmers have seen input costs go up. Our containers of shipments coming into the port have gone down 9%. Those are truck driving jobs, those are port jobs, and those are higher costs for all of us. We need a governor who will recognize that this chaos is hurting the people that the governor is supposed to serve. And we need a governor who, when Virginia's health care is under attack, will stand up and make clear that bad policies coming out of Washington that will put us on path towards the destruction of our safety net hospital, hundreds of thousands of Virginians losing their health care, and the closure of rural hospitals is bad policy that is hurting our fellow Virginians.
Abigail Spanberger in Alexandria, Virginia on Thursday. She is the Democratic nominee for governor. From gov't.com, YouGov surveys conducted October 17th through 28th in Virginia and New Jersey show Democrats leading in both gubernatorial races by 14 percentage points and 9 points respectively. Virginia is 55% for Spanberger, 41% for Winsome Earl Sears. And in the New Jersey race, Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill has 51% to 42% for former Assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican nominee. Jack Ciattarelli posted this video today.
Hey everybody, Jack Ciattarelli here. Let's have a Jack Chat. It's Halloween, which is all about the kids. For sure, when it comes to Halloween, I've got very fond memories of my own childhood and that of my 4 children. Those memories go beyond Halloween, however. I remember a time when we didn't have to worry about our children walking to the bus stop or what they were learning in school on any given day. A time when we had complete confidence in our public school system. I want to get back to that day. As governor, parents of school-age children have my full commitment that we will. We'll get back to the basics in teaching critical life skills like reading, writing, math, science, and civics. We'll get back to providing traditional vocational training because not all kids want or need to go to college. And we'll leave age-inappropriate, sensitive subject matter to the kitchen table, where parents can decide when and if to discuss with their own children. As governor, we'll remove Policy 5756. No longer will school districts be keeping secrets from parents. We also won't let biological boys play in girls' sports. We'll have a Parents' Bill of Rights. And if the local district is not meeting the needs of your child, we'll provide school choice with vouchers and charter schools. Together, we can fix New Jersey, and that includes our public schools. Be sure to vote. It's time.
Video from Jack Ciattarelli, Republican nominee for New Jersey governor. The Democratic nominee, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, spoke Thursday at the Westfield train station in Westfield, New Jersey, joined by former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. The subject, the Gateway Tunnel project. WABC writing that earlier this month, President Donald Trump terminated federal support for the $16 billion Gateway Tunnel project, which would build a new rail tunnel under the Hudson River while the existing tunnel is rehabilitated.
So yes, I fought tooth and nail, and we got that federal share, the most significant project in the entire nation, a project that could impact about 100,000 jobs in the region. As you heard, good union jobs. We know that about 200,000 commuters take this tunnel every single day. And as you heard from Jason and Ravi, you heard about the impact to commuters' lives, the idea of trying to get home desperately for that kid's game or to make dinner with your family. Or I remember the gut-churning feeling of trying to get home to pick your kid up at daycare. That is the impact on the quality of life. And imagine, Westfield, if you had a one-seat ride. Imagine. What a godsend that would be. And so that's why I'm continuing to fight so hard. And when President Trump illegally said that he was going to terminate the project, once again, we swung into action to fight that. Somebody else failed to swing into action to fight that. Jack Ciattarelli has refused to speak out against it. In fact, just yesterday or the day before, holding a very odd interview where he kept refusing to answer pointed questions about his support for this. He has said that he is going to cancel different transit lines across the state. He doesn't want to invest in public transit. He doesn't seem to care about the Gateway Tunnel because there's only one thing he seems to care about, and that is making sure he never gets crosswise of Donald Trump. That's not who I'm going to serve as your governor. I'm going to focus on serving the people of New Jersey.
Mikey Sherrill, Democratic nominee for New Jersey governor at the Westfield train station in Westfield, New Jersey, on Thursday. President Trump wrote on Truth Social Wednesday on the governor's races in New Jersey and Virginia. Virginia and New Jersey, vote Republican if you want massive energy cost and crime reductions. The Democrats will double and even triple your energy costs, and crime will be rampant. A vote for the Democrats is a death wish. Vote Republican. That post from President Trump. Election Day is Tuesday, November 4th, and that night, C-SPAN will bring you, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, live, unfiltered coverage of America's democratic process. The other key races we'll watch, New York City Mayor and California's Prop 50, the congressional redistricting constitutional amendment that could shift the balance of power in Congress in the 2026 midterm elections. We'll have victory and concession speeches, analysis from Wall Street Journal national political reporter Sabrina Siddiqui and Cook Political Report's Matthew Klein, plus your phone calls and online posts. Election night, Tuesday, November 4th, starting 6 p.m. Eastern on C-SPAN. Amy Walter, Cook Political Report publisher and editor-in-chief, spoke Thursday night at the Dole Institute of Politics at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas, mostly about the 2026 midterm elections in the House and Senate. One audience member asked her about Democratic Party leadership.
Ever since Obama, the Democrats really haven't had anyone to step forward who could generate any kind of energy for the last 10 years. Any thoughts about why that has happened for 10 years? And do you think anyone will step forward soon as the Democrats really need someone right now who can generate energy in the party.
Yeah. So I covered, when I came into politics, that was the frustration of Republicans who'd say, why can't we find a Ronald Reagan? We just need to find a Ronald Reagan, right? This isn't Ronald Reagan. This isn't Ronald Reagan. Nobody at that time would have said, you know who your Ronald Reagan's going to be? Donald Trump, right? And they're like, that's who it's going to be. That's the guy who's going to inspire, like, literally the highest turnout we've seen in 100 years. So some of it is appreciating that it is really hard. Each one of these people that we talk, when you talk about Bill Clinton, when you talk about Obama, when you talk about Trump, these are people that are unique. Sometimes they're called generational talents. It is a difficult thing. So very few people can hit that mark. And it's why, you know, I appreciate anybody who wants to get into the arena and run for office. I applaud them. A lot of people think that they watch these guys on TV and women on TV and think, like, I can run for president. How hard is it? I'm really smart. I know a lot of things. And then they get in there and they realize, oh, this is a lot harder than it looks. And Democrats, there's not a dearth of Democratic talent out there. There are governors, there are senators, there are plenty of people. My theory on presidential elections, though, is we can't know who that person's going to be until, one, we have a better understanding of what the electorate wants. You have to be the candidate that meets the moment, right? So there are plenty of people that look good on paper, but if the election is about we're in a time of war or we're in a recession, you want a different president than if, I don't know, the economy's doing great or we're dealing with this health crisis or something like that. So I think you have to go to that. The other is sometimes people who on paper seem, when I talk about people on paper who look bad, but then or look great, but then they turn out to be bad. There are also people that you hear about the very first time. Like I remember hearing about Pete Buttigieg. I was like, you're the mayor of South Bend, Indiana.
You're the
Okay.
gay mayor
Yeah.
of South Bend, Indiana.
That's adorable. You're gonna run for president?
Yeah.
And I remember I interviewed him in the early days. I was like, this guy is really impressive.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you know, if he gets on the debate stage, he'll be able to, like,
Yeah.
you know, he can raise his profile and he can do something with that later on. But I would not have said, oh, and by the way, this guy's gonna make it all the way into the top tier.
I remember when David Axelrod was going around Washington telling people, there's this state senator in Illinois
named
Barack
Hussein Obama.
You won't believe how great he is. And everybody goes,
Oh, right.
Okay,
Yeah,
David,
I'm sure
thank
it's
you.
great.
See
Right.
you.
Right.
And he was right?
Yep.
So, but who knew?
Yep.
So.
Amy Walter, Cook Political Report publisher and editor-in-chief at the Dole Institute of Politics at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas, Thursday night. This weekend, most of the United States will turn back the clock 1 hour, ending daylight saving time and returning to standard time. Earlier this week, there was another unsuccessful effort in the U.S. Senate to end for good the twice-a-year clock switching and make daylight saving time permanent. The bill was sponsored by Senator Rick Scott, Republican of Florida, with a bipartisan group of lawmakers. It was blocked by Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas. Here's one of the co-sponsors, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat from Rhode Island, on the Senate floor on Wednesday.
Mr. President, each November, we fall back into darkness, very literally. If we pass my Sunshine Protection Act and make daylight saving time permanent, we'd gain an hour of afternoon sunlight in the winter months for families to soak up after work and after school. This measure has been so bipartisan that it has previously passed this body by unanimous consent. Here is what President Trump said about it. The House and Senate should push hard for more daylight at the end of a day. Very popular. And more importantly, no more changing of the clocks, a big inconvenience, and for our government, a very costly event. My co-sponsor before Senator Scott came here was his predecessor from Florida, Senator Rubio, who is now our Secretary of State. who said that we should, and I'm quoting him here, stop enduring the ridiculous and antiquated practice of switching our clocks back and forth. Let's end the need to fall back and spring forward for good. I don't always agree with President Trump and with former Senator, now Secretary Rubio, but I sure do agree about this.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat from Rhode Island, on the Senate floor on Wednesday. When the time came to ask unanimous consent to pass this bill, Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, objected.
In January of 1974, millions of Americans traveled to work in school in darkness. Commuter trains were delayed. School children carried flashlights. Tragically, some of these kids were struck by cars and killed while walking to school in the dark. One woman from Long Island, speaking to the New York Times, summed up the black mood of the nation. "It's the end," she said. "I can't cope anymore. I'm just staying in bed." What calamity had befallen our nation? Had Soviet Russia finally attacked America? Had we suffered a nationwide power outage? Were the heavens conspiring to plunge our nation into darkness? No. As it turns out, the answer was more mundane and foolish. A few months earlier, Congress, in its eternal wisdom, had imposed a top-down change on every American's daily life, eliminating standard time and adopting daylight savings time year-round. Such a change to the nation's clocks had never happened before, except as an emergency rationing measure during wartime. While briefly popular, it proved deeply unpopular when reality set in. According to opinion polls, support for permanent daylight savings time fell by 30 percentage points in just 3 months. Only a few weeks after it was implemented, it was underwater. Congress beat a hasty retreat, repealing the law and changing the clocks back in October. What was supposed to be a 2-year experiment ended in abject failure after less than 1 year. It's said that those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And that's what would happen if Congress passes the so-called Sunshine Protection Act, once again ending standard time and imposing daylight savings time year-round. If permanent daylight savings time becomes the law of the land, it will again make winter a dark and dismal time for millions of Americans.
Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, on the Senate floor on Wednesday, blocking a bill to make daylight saving time permanent as we head into the weekend when the clocks in most of the U.S. will fall back an hour to standard time. Washington Post article on what happened in the Senate this week has these paragraphs. The public has long wanted to end the time changes, polls show. Just 12% of Americans favor the current system, according to an AP NORC poll released Thursday. Another 47% oppose it, and the remainder said they were neither opposed or in favor. But there's little consensus on what to adopt instead. 56% of Americans say they would prefer year-round daylight saving time, with more light in the evening and less in the morning, while 42% want year-round standard time, with more light in the morning and less at night, AP NORC found, from the Washington Post article. And thanks for listening to Washington Today. Before we go, a programming note: C-SPAN's Ceasefire airs tonight at 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern. The guests, Senator John Curtis, Republican of Utah, and Congressman Scott Peters, Democrat from California. Host Dasha Burns will sit down with them for a bipartisan, bicameral dialogue on the top issues facing the country, including the government shutdown and foreign policy. C-SPAN Ceasefire tonight, 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern. Have a good night and weekend.